We never talk politics much, or religion, or any of those things you're told not to bring up in a bar. And yet we did talk about them in our own way. He'd say something and I'd say something else, and we'd argue and I'd get heated, and he'd just laugh. That rough laugh of his, like he'd had 1,000 fights and he'd won enough to make losing a small matter. And I guess he had. It wasn't that I agreed with him, and it wasn't that he agreed with me. I mean, we were men with our own worlds in our heads. He had been places I hadn't, and I'd done things he'd never dreamed of. We'd both seen something in life worth holding on to, and neither one of us was about to give it up for the other. That was all right. If he believed one thing and I believed another, but I'd drink with him and he'd drink with me, and that was enough. People talk about respect. It's a word they throw around like it's loose change, like something you just pick up and toss away. But respect is something different when you mean it. It's looking across the table and knowing you don't have to agree with the man to sit there. It's understanding that his life is his and yours is yours. And if you can't shake hands on that, you can't shake hands at all. I remember one night we had both had a few too many, and the talk turned ugly for a minute. He said something, and I felt the blood come up in my face. But then I looked at him, and he looked at me, and we both laughed. I don't know why. Maybe it was because we knew that the world we live in, people hurt each other over things like that. Two men can sit at a table and disagree without pulling a blade, possibly. It was simple, really. I could hate his ideas, but I couldn't hate the man. Not when I knew he'd pull a man from a river if he saw him drowning, and no matter his politics or the cross he wore, and he knew I'd do the same. We kept meeting there, same place, same warm bar, the kind of smell that smelled like old wood and stale beer. The kind where men went to talk or not talk at all, depending on the night. Some nights we'd talk about anything, but the nights we really disagreed on, we'd just tell stories from before when we got too set in our ways. Fishing stories, tales of women, who had once mattered, roads we'd traveled or meant to travel. And some nights we'd argue, not loud, but with the cold fire that comes when you believe something deep in your gut. He'd lean forward, his face tight, eyes fixed on me, saying I had it all wrong. I'd shake my head and tell him he was blind to what mattered most. We never got anywhere with that. The world didn't shift an inch. I never convinced him, and he never convinced me, but it was honest, each of us testing our own beliefs against something solid. I remember one time it got tense, one of those lines you think you can't come back from. He said something about what he thought was right, what he thought everyone ought to see. And I told him he was wrong, flat out wrong. And for a second it felt like a fight, like fists might come up, like the air changed in the room. But then he just laughed, said it was a damned foolish thing to get riled up over when there were real problems in the world, things worth fighting about if we hadn't had the sense. So I laughed too, and we ordered another round. When he left that night, we walked out under the street lights, casting long shadows, and we didn't say anything, but I knew right then that the world had room enough for his kind and for mine. that maybe a man could love his country or his God or whatever he believed in without needing to tear someone else down. It's funny, I suppose. You think the big things matter the most, the ideas that they get people seriously hurt, but in the end, it's the small things that hold you together. A shared drink, a joke, the fact that he'd be there if you needed him, and he'd know that you'd be there if he ever needed you. I suppose that's what friendship really is. Not agreement, not matching creeds, or waving the same flag. Just the understanding that you'd been around long enough to see the world in your own way, and that somehow, despite all that, you could sit at the same table, drink to something honest, and leave knowing you'd meet again next week.